Let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, that we may walk in his paths. The nation's Ninth of Av invites you to join us in the conversation of Christians and Jews walking together in fulfillment of God's covenant promises.
Hello, this is Steve Warp from Nation's Ninth of Av, and I have a very good friend with me today. And, it's very rare that somebody like Yishai Fleisher is on board with us. But I want to give you a little bit of background on him. He's the international spokesman for Hebron, the Jewish community of Hebron. He's a broadcaster on the Land of Israel Network. He's a columnist for the Daily Wire, the Jewish press. He's been published in the New York Times, featured on CNN, Al Jazeera, Fox, Vice, BBC, and many other places. And one of the things that he's well known for is during the UNESCO debate, when UNESCO was actually trying to make Hebron, the Tomb of the Patriarchs, national heritage site or world heritage site for the Palestinians, he stood up against it and was very instrumental in having the U.S. and Israel withdraw from UNESCO. So Yishai has been done a lot of work. His passion is for the land. And I'm just really happy to be able to introduce him. He's going to take us through Hebron. He's going to tell us what it's like to live in Israel, and especially in Judea and Samaria, and share his passion, how you got there, what touched your heart and brought you back to Israel, especially with such a zeal. So thank you, Yishai. Please share.
First thing, thank you, Steve. And it's an honor to be together with friends of Israel from around the world, and people who love the Bible, faithful people who love God. So it's an honor to be with our brothers and sisters from around the world, people who share the recognition that God is doing great things, those things that he promised to the forefathers and mothers of the Jewish people, the founders of it all, of all of our faiths, really our ethical monotheistic faiths. The real hero is Abraham. And we're following in Abraham's footsteps. And in the promises that God made to Abraham about 3,800 years ago, that this land would belong to his children, and that they may indeed go into exile, but he will bring them back to this land. And I think we're witnessing the greatest miracle that mankind has seen really in 2,000 years. And in some ways, this miracle is the miracle that's just as big, if not bigger, than the Exodus from Egypt, than the revelation at Mount Sinai. Because today it's a cynical world. It's a world of doubt. And yet, this miracle of the ingathering of the exiles from all the corners of the earth, the Jewish people will come back to the land, and that the language Hebrew would be reborn, that the Jewish culture would be reborn, the Jewish Israeli economy would be reborn, a military that would push back like biblical times on the enemies of Israel, and that this thing is only growing and becoming alive again, and the holy cities, the godly cities, are becoming repopulated by the Jewish people. It's just an amazing miracle. By the way, in parentheses, just as we're back, so too ancient enemies have also returned. Today's Philistines, the so-called Palestinians, are part of that just kind of biblical reunion, shall we say?
They have no physical heritage going back there, though.
No. But they embody. That's correct. Yes. Unlike the Jewish people, they're not the same people, but it doesn't matter. There are elements, and by the way, I don't mean all Arab Palestinians, but there are elements within that society, what I call the jihad, which embodies the same principles as the Philistines. By the way, Gaza was a Philistine city par excellence, and it was always a challenge to Israel. The word Gaza means brazen, and so to this very day, Gaza has once again become a brazen enemy of Israel. So, I mean, in some way, sometimes when you see even bad things, you laugh because you realize that they're also a revelation. I'll give you an example from America. I was down in Manhattan one time in the financial district, and I saw a big golden bull, this big giant Merrill Lynch golden bull. And I looked up to the heavens and I laughed. I was like, this is just funny. I mean, who sits around in a boardroom and says, guys, we should put up a statue to honor the bull market. What should we do? Let's make a golden bull and put it down here. Was there nobody in the room was like, hey, golden bull, it's got a bad connotation.
Yes.
So sometimes God, even when he shows some of the bad stuff, there's something beautiful in the revelation and the deep narrative, deep characters that the Bible speaks of, and they're back as well. So this is in that sense, this is a time of great, great, great revelation. So for myself personally, I have been involved for the last 20 years with the issue of ingathering of the exiles. In Hebrew, we have a term called aliyah, which means bringing the Jewish people back to the land of Israel. Aliyah means going up. It means taking a step up, because the land of Israel is a higher spiritual level. And so people who immigrate to the land of Israel make aliyah. That's what we say. We mix Hebrew and English there. So that's one issue. And the other issue is Jewish rights to the contested heartland of the Jewish people, which we know as Judea and Samaria, but the media and people around the world, and oftentimes enemies of Israel, call it the West Bank, which are the areas north and south of Jerusalem in the highlands. It's mountainous area. And this mountainous area is actually the place that has what I call the original 7 holy cities, the menorah, the 7 candelabra of the holy cities of the land of Israel. And we'll see them in a second. I'll have some pictures of them. But the point is that these holy cities were lost to us in the 1948 War of Independence. We won the War of Independence, and we gained our independence. We won it from 6 Arab armies who wanted to destroy us utterly. But at the same time, in 1948, we lost the heartland of Israel, including most of the important part of Jerusalem, the central, right. Later to be called Eastern Jerusalem, but it's really silly. It's really the heart of Jerusalem. We're talking about the Old City and the Western Wall, and of course the Temple Mount, which is where 2 temples stood previously, and we're hoping and we're praying, and we've been promised the 3rd one as well. So we're working on that. And in 1948, we lost these important places. We'll see the rest of them in a second. And then in 1967, in a war which was so miraculous that they refused to study it at West Point, because it's pointless to study a war of miracles, because you can't you can't
make a strategy based on that,
right? And you can't reproduce it so easily. So the 6-Day War was the war in which God revealed himself in the most, again, since the splitting of the Red Sea. I'm not sure we ever saw the hand of God reach down from heaven as clearly. And we were just learning in the book of Numbers that the evil wizard Balak, when does he really bless the Jewish people? Excuse me, Bilam. But Balak was the king of Moab who hired him. But this Bilam, this evil wizard, when does he really end up being forced to bless the Jews? When he sees their dwelling places en masse. And I recently was on the 20th floor of a beautiful new tower in Jerusalem. And when I went up to my friend's apartment on the 20th floor, and I saw all of Jerusalem splayed before me. And I saw this reborn capital, this city that we call the eternal city, because nothing can stamp it out. Nothing could, no amount of effort to destroy it destroys it. And when I saw it with my own eyes, my hands went up like this, and I was just like, I can see you eye to eye, as the Bible says. Eye to eye, God of Israel, I can see you eye to eye, because I see your dwelling place is Israel and your rebuilt city, Jerusalem. And our sages tell us that God says, I shall not enter the upper Jerusalem until I enter the lower Jerusalem. And so we're seeing the lower Jerusalem being populated and being reborn. And you just know because of that it's a time of redemption. The Jewish people back in the land of Israel, sovereign as a sovereign Jewish state, speaking their language, with their calendar, with their currency, with their army, these are all external trappings, but they speak of this amazing truth of God's presence returning to Zion. If I had one tagline for myself, if I had one mission statement for myself, is to be on the team of helping God return his presence to Zion. If I can have just that little role in my life, is to be able to go to sleep at the end of 120 years and say, I had a small role in helping God's presence return to Zion, then I would have done what I set out to do for myself. And I do think that we're living in an incredible time that we can have a role in helping God's presence return to Zion, or helping people see that, helping people recognize that, helping people open their eyes and say, I am not a dreamer in the negative sense. I am seeing a dream fulfilled in the positive sense. And I think that the nations, people who love God, faithful people who love the Bible, people who love the footsteps of Abraham, can see it coming to fruition in our time. And I only adjourn everybody to assure, what's the right word? I only can help propel people to, like yourself, Steve, to get people more into the great story of Israel, more publicize that miracle, more say it every morning. Just behind you right now, I see a picture of a map of the land of Israel and the flag of Israel. Those are simple ways in which you could say, I am connected to this land and this story. And I even have friends in the United States and other places who fly the flag of Israel along with their national flag. But the point is to be aware of the miracle, to know God and to see his actions in this world. So that's the sense of the time we're living in, I think.
Because that's what has amazed me. And coming from a Christian background, we were always waiting for God to do something. But I see as I walk and get to know the Jewish community, they believe they're partners in what God is doing.
Correct.
That we enjoin with God as sons to take action and do what he'd have us do. He's making this step, we're making this step. He's called us home, we're rebuilding the cities. And taking possession. God he said, I've given you this land in the first Exodus, and then he said, go take possession. So there was a handshake there, which is incredible. But the rebirth of Israel, for me, it is a testimony to God's promises and the covenants, and that he will fulfill his word. That not only if he's fulfilling it to you, that blessing of Abraham was for all nations. We have a very important, not only a part, but the promise is also to us that with your blessing, all nations are blessed. So this should give those that love the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob should be fully on board with what God is doing through you and in you. And I can't imagine, how could you stand against this?
Right. Well, not standing against it is good, but standing for it and taking an active role in it. And there's so many ways to take an active role. The first one saying, I'm going to take an active role, which means coming here and visiting and connecting to real people, not just a theoretical idea. Right. It means drinking the wine of Israel so that you could support Israel on the one hand, but on the other hand, having Israel within you. Mm-hmm. It means fighting the lies, because the way that the enemies of Israel are attacking today is, since they have been a little bit disempowered in terms of physical warfare, and the effort to eradicate us as a people has so far failed them. So now they're onto a completely different tack, which is to simply besmirch the name of Israel, delegitimize the idea of Israel, undermine every single intellectual pillar that could help you believe in Israel. They are trying to undermine the Bible. Oh, that's just a group of people that wrote a book because they felt like it. Much later on, archaeology. No, you don't have any proof. That's not good proof. Israel's history. Oh, it's filled with bad things. You're actually a bad people. You're actually against human rights and human values and social justice. And the list goes on and on. History? No, it's actually somebody else's history in this place, like UNESCO. So there is a concerted effort to attack every single intellectual pillar, every one that you could possibly think. Well, this helps me understand why the Jews should belong to this land. They're trying to undermine that. I call that the narrative war.
So there's only two sides of this war, though. I mean, you can either accept that God is doing what he promised, or you can actually oppose what he's doing and his kingdom. And it's almost like Psalm 2, where why do the nations rage? I mean, and plot a vain thing. And I truly believe all the world has to make a decision. It's a time of decision. Are we going to get on board with what God is doing, keeping his word, establishing his kingdom? Or are we going to oppose it? I don't believe there's a neutral. I do not believe there is a neutral at this.
But there is also an effort to, for example, take away your children's connection to the Bible, and that's going to happen on American campuses, and that's going to happen all on American television. It's going to make the Bible look foolish and backwards, and etc. And so the effort, for example, one of the intellectual pillars is to separate between Israel and the nations and the people around the world who would connect to them in various ways. By the way, I forgot to mention one more intellectual narrative attack against the legal foundations of Israel. So we think we have law, international law behind us fully. No, they claim you don't. There is no God. There is no Bible. There is no archaeology. There was no King David. And you're going to hear this over and over again said in 1,000,000 different ways. Israel's immoral. And so every single rationale is under attack. My point is only that people of faith, and I mean various kinds of faith too, however you understand it, if you understand yourself to be a lover of Israel, on the side of Israel, you have to know that we're in an intellectual battle, a battle for legitimacy, a battle for justice, a battle for the truth. And I even came up with a title like there's a victory of truth. But that victory has to be, it's going to be hard fought and hard won. And so everybody who's listening to the program today, you can't be sitting on the sidelines. You got to take one tiny step, whatever that tiny step is. You got to take put a bumper sticker on your car. I stand with Israel. I'm blessed by Israel. However it is. It's important to make that fight. Or even I believe in the Bible. I believe the words of the Bible. I believe in God. Even that today is a revolution. Even that's a countercultural idea. I believe in God. Just say that. And you've already said I believe in the God of Abraham. These are massive statements today that will affect our children. Now,
anchors for our faith.
That's right. Abraham is the anchor for our faith, and it's something that brings Jewish people and all monotheistic faiths together as Abraham.
So spokesman for Hebron.
That's right.
That is one of the anchors, one of the pillars that is a focal point for your life and one of your passions.
Absolutely. I was a lot of lovers of Israel, a lot of Bible lovers aren't tight on what Hebron is. Mm-hmm. People know what Jerusalem is. Jerusalem, that's the capital of Israel, David's capital. That's where 2 temples stood. All right, people got that. But what is Hebron? Hebron, or we say in Hebrew, Hebron, which comes from the word chaver, which is friendship, which is togetherness, which is union. It's the place where Abraham made his first purchase in the land of Israel. This is not a small thing. The Bible details in Genesis chapter 23 the story about Abraham's Middle East style purchase, argumentation and purchase for.
He's haggling back then too.
He's haggling, and actually, if you read it in that with that atmosphere of the Middle East, you'll see how real it is. Yeah. It's one of the most beautiful and profound, and a lot of social commentary. You get a lot of sense about how the Middle East operates, and it's the same to this very day. And he's haggling with Ephron the Hittite 3,800 years ago for a plot of land in Hebron to bury his beloved wife Sarah. And that's what he ends up doing. He purchases that plot of land. That's not a small thing. Abraham purchases a plot of land in Israel, in the land of Israel. That started in Hebron. So that's issue number one, the purchase. And then the second thing is the burial. He buries his beloved wife Sarah. And then later on, both Ishmael and Isaac, the father of the Arabs and the father of the Jews, together, actually it's Isaac and Ishmael, the Bible says, bury Abraham together there. So the father of the Jews, the father of the Arabs, bury Father Abraham together. And then what's so important to understand is that suddenly we understand what Hebron is really about. It's about couples. It's about Abraham and Sarah. That's why it's called Hebron, from the word connection. It's about love. Steve, you remember the tagline for Virginia, for the state of Virginia?
No.
Virginia is for lovers.
Okay.
You remember that? Yes. That's right. That's the tagline. And I always say Hebron is for lovers. Okay. Hebron is about Abraham and Sarah. And then later on, Isaac and Rebekah are going to be buried there. And then later on, Leah and Jacob, whose other name is Israel. According to the Kabbalah, the mystical tradition that the Jewish people carry, Adam and Eve are also buried there. In fact, the reason that Abraham wanted to bury Sarah there because he found that it was actually the entrance to the Garden of Eden on a mystical level. And that, therefore, it's really a place of couples. It's really a place of couples. And so that's what Hebron's really about. Hebron's the first purchase of the Jewish people, land of Israel. It's the place to this very day where the founding couples lay. They're buried, but our tradition tells us they're not quite dead. If you remember the movie Princess Bride, they're only mostly dead, And what we mean by that is we believe that they're more sleeping than dead, in the sense that their spirit is still there. They still pray to God, and that place, therefore, is the place where Abraham and Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah are there, and their energy is still there. So when you come to Hebron, you're really coming to connect with the founders of the story, with the book of Genesis. Hebron is home to the book of Genesis.
Oh, so good.
I'm always thinking of the right tagline, Steve, for Hebron, for the nations. Should I call it Hebron, home of the book of Genesis? Should I call it Visit Father Abraham? Should I call it Hebron, City of Abraham?
I don't know. I always remember the other story because that's where the kingdom of David started. That's where, and so there's two connections in there.
Absolutely,
that there is that kingdom that was promised by God, that was actually there for 7 years before Jerusalem. So
you're absolutely right. King David is from the tribe of Judah. Hebron is also the capital of the tribe of Judah. So King David, as he's starting out, he's first kind of king over the Judean tribe, the tribe of Judah. So he's king there. Then a miracle happens, and all the Jewish people, the Israelis, come and they agree on one thing. They crown King David. That's the miracle, that all the Jews agreed on one thing. That right there is the miraculous thing. So
again soon in our day.
Amen. And that's right. And so Hebron is also home to, if you want me to say it in a way that I say it on the tour a lot of times, I'll say, all right, try to get a load of this. If you agree with me, if you could accept the idea that Adam and Eve are buried there, then it's the foundations of mankind. If you believe that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the matriarchs are buried there, then it's what has given content and direction throughout all of human history. Has given direction for mankind. So the foundations of mankind, the content for mankind, and then you understand that King David started his reign here, which means that it's the first seat of King David, which means that it's the roots of the Messiah, since we all believe that King David is the root of the Messianic tradition. Yeah. And so if that, then the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs in Hebron is the root of mankind, what has given content to mankind, to the destiny of mankind. It all has its root in this place. So that's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, that explains why there's such a controversy and such a struggle over Hebron.
Sure.
It is a very first foundation, was what you're saying. That's correct. Where the first purchase, and so.
What if you had to use one word, it would be root. It's the root. It's the root of all the stuff. It's the root of all the stuff we just said. The root of humanity, root of the Bible, root of the Messianic tradition. So it's the root. So if you're an enemy of the Jewish people, what do you want to do? Uproot.
Yep. Yes.
That's what you want to do. You want to uproot. And so, and by the way, we also have the tomb of Ruth there. So they only want to uproot. They also want to uproot in Hebron. And so the enemies of Israel are sophisticated. Never underestimate the enemy. Never. Yes. Always understand that they are serious and that they mean business. Indeed, they are weaker today in some ways than before, thank God. But they want to uproot the Jewish story of Hebron, the biblical story of Hebron. They want to uproot it. And so we have to fight it on so many levels, including clearly settling the land, having tourism. It's so important that the nations will come and visit and connect to Father Abraham and to feel. Remember what the Bible tells us. Avraham, Av Hamon Goim. He is the father of many nations. Meaning to say that he is our, as Mike Pence, as Vice President Mike Pence said at the Knesset, he said Abraham is our forefather in faith. Yes. What a beautiful phrase he said. I'm telling you, I was so, he came to the Knesset, the vice president, and he spoke so beautifully. In any case, he really nailed that part. So that we have so many ways that we have to fight for it, certainly to visit it, certainly to build it. I'm working on making it even more of a touristic destination, obviously not a cheap one, a meaningful one, and one filled with history, with faith, with archaeology, etc. But we have to stand up for Abraham, because the other folks want to erase his story and our story and the story of the Bible. Should we take a look at some pictures?
Let's take a tour. Let's do
it. Let me hit the screen share here, and I will open up some of my photos. I don't know if we'll be able to see all of them. Steve, one of the main projects that I'm working on right now is what I call the original Bible Belt. And that Bible Belt is a road which is called Route 60. And that road really starts in the south in the town of Beersheba, where Abraham began teaching. Then a little bit north of that, Hebron, where we just talked about that. The forefathers and mothers are buried. King David starts his kingdom. Then Bethlehem, Ephrat, where I'm right now, which is the birthplace of King David and important to the Christian tradition as well, and where the book of Ruth took place. Then obviously the heart of it all, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. That's where it's all at. Jerusalem, that's God's abode. Bethel, where Jacob had his dream of the ladder. That's Bethel, means the house of God. Shiloh, where the tabernacle stood, where Hannah prayed and was blessed with Samuel. And Shechem, or what the Arabs call Nablus, which is where the Jewish people, where Joseph is buried, where the tomb of Joseph is, and also where the Jewish people, already in the book of Deuteronomy tells us how it's going to be, but in the book of Joshua, they come in and they receive the Torah anew in the land of Israel, renew their covenant in the land of Israel. These 7 holy cities, and there are other important cities in Israel, but these are the biblical cities, the heart of the Bible. And so my job is in Hebron, at the tomb of the fathers and mothers. This is just another way to see it. This is Israel's heartland. Okay, I heart Israel's heartland. We came up with that slogan. Okay, the heart of it all, as I said, was Jerusalem. So here's just a picture of people praying at the wall.
Amazing.
Here's another picture of Jews at the Western Wall. Now, it's important to understand that the Western Wall is not the holiest place for the Jewish people. I repeat, it is not the holiest place. The Western Wall is a small part of the wall that was the supporting 4 walls of the Temple Mount complex. And where the Golden Dome is where the Holy of Holies of the first, second, and soon to be third temple stood and will stand. So, some Jews like myself venture on top and walk around the Temple Mount regularly. All right, here's the Holy Land from space. You can see clearly this is where Eilat is, the Gulf of Aqaba, the Straits of Suez, the Suez Canal is here. This is the Sinai Peninsula, and here is the Dead Sea. Up here is Lake Kinneret, but in this mountain region in the middle is kind of the heartland of the Bible. Okay, I work at a place called Hebron. There's, by the way, many Hebrons in America, and I get a kick out of watching all kinds of fun Hebron sports and all kinds of stuff happening in America. This is the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs as it was 100 years ago.
Wow.
And the land is the land of Judea. These are grapevines. Right now, as we're speaking, it's about 3 weeks from the first grape harvest. And it's just, if you live with grapes, this whole period, these many last months, you just see them budding and growing and getting ready to I don't know what the right term is, but they're it's just part of the atmosphere around here is the growing of the grapes. I was just jogging through grape fields this afternoon. Okay, the Tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs today is an important site. You can see here the IDF has some swearing in ceremonies at the tomb. Here's the tomb with Israeli flags. And you can see on the right, on the left, there are minarets. These are Muslim minarets because this building, although it is the tomb monument to the forefathers and mothers, it's also, for the last 700 years, more than 700 years, also an Islamic site. And to this very day, it serves as a mosque in part. And in the year 1267, when the Mamluks came, it's a certain brand of kind of jihadist Muslims, they evicted Jews from this tomb, from praying inside this mausoleum complex, and they relegated us to be outside for 700 years, from 1267 to 1967. When I say 700 years, just for a second, contemplate that when I drove recently from California to Arizona, I crossed over the border. It said, "Welcome to Arizona, celebrating 100 years, celebrating a centennial." So Arizona and Phoenix are 100 years old in terms of the United States of America. From the Jews have been living in this town for 3,800 years, and were evicted from the tomb of our fathers and mothers for 700 years, from 1267 till 1967. All right, here's first grade girls receiving their book of Genesis at the foot of the tombs of the mothers and fathers. As you can see, it's not just a tomb. It's a living site where the book of Genesis lives. Steve, I need you to help me with thinking about a good tagline for Hebron that's going to work with the nations.
Okay, definitely.
A lot of people come to the tomb to pray in different ways. These are different kinds of Jews, different kinds of folks. But these are some of the en masse groups that we have. This is my friend Rabbi Shlomo Katz. This is obviously on the festival of Sukkot, because you can see the palm fronds and the citron. And there's Rabbi Shlomo doing what he does, which is make beautiful music. These are actually evangelical Christian Chinese folks, of which they told me there's 100 million of them. This was way before Corona.
Oh.
Don't be telling me where's my mask, okay? This was before we ever knew we should be wearing masks. We do a lot to try to bring people in. We run big concerts. We have a movie theater that we show the history of Hebron. These are actually new immigrants to the land of Israel, Jewish ones. We have sometimes laser light shows where we color the whole building in art and make it attractive. We have big concerts. That's all because we want to bring people in to this place because sometimes people are a little bit afraid because there's a lot of Arabs in our region. And because of that, people are sometimes a little bit reticent to come. So we make sure that they have a reason to come. Now, this is a cross section of the tombs, and the thing is that when you go inside the building, it's not that there's tombs. There's tomb markers, cenotaphs. If you've ever been to like places like Grant's Tomb in Manhattan, you see like a big pillar on top of the tomb. That pillar is not the tomb. The tomb is below. So too within the building there are pillars. Now, one of the most beautiful things, Steve, about this whole thing is that the pillars are arranged 2 by 2. 2 by 2.
Wow.
The central pillars, as you can see in this cross section, is Abraham and Sarah. Okay, you can see here it says Abraham and Sarah. All right, that's in the middle.
Back to the couple story.
That's right. And here it's Jacob and Leah. And here it's Isaac and Rebekah. And that's the way this building is arranged. Steve, this is way before feminism was a movement. We're talking about a very ancient site that just says something so simple. This place is about couples, and it's about love, and it's about family values, if you will. Because this place is where not the Jewish idea started, but Jewish peoplehood. And it takes 2 to tango. It takes mamas and the papas to raise a family and give birth to a nation.
Yes. Well, it says, we were just talking about it today, that Elijah returns to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the sons and the sons to the fathers.
That's right.
This whole idea of family, of closeness, of working together, building together, living together, building a future together, it's all tied up right there.
That's right. That's right. And
that heritage that Abraham left has carried on.
Mm-hmm.
All the centuries. The Jewish people have held to that promise.
That's right. And that's really what we're asked to do. We're asked to walk in the footsteps of Abraham and Sarah. Wow. And follow in their ways, follow in their path. That's where that's our mandate. That's our charge. By the way, recently Mount Rushmore has come back into the discourse, and I don't want to comment on that too much, other than that it's a beautiful site that honors great people. But those are all men. That's 4 men. But because it's not a peoplehood, the United States, it's an idea. It's a beautiful idea. It's an idea of democracy and of freedoms and of liberties. But the Jewish people, the story is also about a peoplehood. When we're in our land, that's great. But even when we're not in our land, we're still a separate people. And so again, I go back to this idea that it's about mothers and fathers. And just to make the point, there's a difference between Jerusalem and Hebron. Jerusalem is where you meet God. You want to talk to God? You go to Jerusalem. That's his abode. Don't ask me. Ask the Psalms. It says it over and over again. My abode is Jerusalem. Jerusalem is Zion is my abode. So when you come to Hebron, you don't meet God in the same way. What you meet is the people who walked in the footsteps of God, who walked with God, walked even ahead of God. Remember, it says in the book of Genesis to Abraham, it says, walk before me and be simple or be whole. Walk before me. And you got to lead a little bit. The Jewish people are always also asked to lead. But the difference between Jerusalem and Hebron is Jerusalem is theological. Hebron is genealogical. Okay, that's where you meet the founders, the people.
So I want to know, you said for 700 years, the Jews were not able to come in and live in Hebron. They were removed.
No, they were removed from the building.
Okay.
They were removed from the building, but they were allowed to pray outside on what was called then the seventh step. All right. The Muslims didn't always ethnically cleanse. What they did was they relegated us to a second-class status called Dahimi, and kicked us out of the building. And they renamed it the Ibrahimi Mosque. And they said, these are our forefathers. The truth is that Abraham was a great Muslim, etc. And that's the way they deal with it. So they kicked us out, and we were out for 700 years. Excuse me. And 700 years we were out of our own building. But in 1967, the miracle of the Great Return was a return to Jerusalem, to those cities, and of course to the fathers and mothers.
Now, how about the return of the people living in Jerusalem? I mean, that's a story in itself.
Sure.
Talking about the mothers, the brave women of Israel that actually stepped in the gap and made a difference.
Absolutely. The women of Hebron make all the difference. So just here's an example. This is what it looks like on the inside. There's the marker behind the sign, and then it says tomb monument of the patriarch Abraham. Why do we say tomb monument? Because the tomb is actually beneath the building. And so too, matching right there, is Sarah. Where would Abraham be without Sarah, right? So it says tomb monument of the matriarch Sarah. There's me and the tomb monument of Rebecca, one of my favorite biblical characters. We don't have time to talk about it, but a great biblical character. And that's what it looks like. There's the cenotaph tomb marker. This is what it used to look like before we added the new signs. Well, we could see that there's a lot of events that people come. I guess this picture is where I want to just take a stop at this picture and just kind of show you. This is a picture taken Friday night by the security services. We don't take pictures Friday night. We don't operate electricity on the Sabbath,
right?
Which goes from Friday night to Saturday night. But we have Steve. Sometimes people who are not familiar with the Jewish tradition and faith, they don't know that we actually read the 5 books of Moses as a scroll, the Torah scroll. That's the 5 books of Moses. And we read it sequentially, and we'd start in Genesis, and we end at the end of Deuteronomy every single year. So we go from beginning to end, which also means that certain Torah portions, we don't skip around. We don't skip around. We don't choose. Let's discuss this, this passage this week. The whole people are on one section every week, and we read it on Shabbat on Saturday. So we have one Saturday a year where we read chapter 23 of the book of Genesis. And that Shabbat, that Sabbath has a special name. It's called Shabbat Chayei Sarah, which means the life of Sarah. That is actually how that Torah portion is called, because it says this is the life of Sarah, and it's all about her death, the haggling for the tomb of a burial plot to bury her, Abraham's burial of Sarah in Hebron, and then subsequently the search for a wife for Isaac who would take the place of Sarah as that kind of matriarch. And so the whole story is about going to find this girl, Rebecca, who would have the wherewithal to fill in those big shoes of Sarah. And on that Shabbat, when we read the Torah portion, we have about 20,000 people from all over Israel descending on our little town for the whole weekend. So this is just an example, a picture of all the tents and all the people praying Friday night at the tomb of the fathers and mothers in Hebron.
So those are all tents down there in that
Here, you see, these are tents. These are people coming to pray, and there's much more throughout the whole town. There's RVs and everything you can imagine. A big part of our story in Hebron is soldiers because we're a small, embattled community surrounded by the Palestinian Authority. We've got a lot of soldiers that defend our rights. So here's a great picture of a female soldier, and you can see she's sitting on a special chair. Don't have time to explain what chair this is, but the bottom line, there she is, and you can see the Star of David, and you can see that she's armed, and she's fighting to protect the Jewish community of Hebron. Here's some of our soldiers that come in and they tour and defend. This is actually very interesting, Steve.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
This is actually a program in the IDF called SAR-L. These are Jews and non-Jews, old and young, who come to volunteer in Israel, in the Israeli army. So you have Jews who are like, gosh, I missed the opportunity to serve in the Israeli army, or Gentiles who say, I want to fight for Israel. So they come and serve at different ages, and I tour them. They absolutely love what they're doing. All right, I got a lot of pictures of kids. There they are getting their book of Genesis. This picture should be a Pulitzer Prize winning picture, but they're not giving me the Pulitzer. But here you have fathers blessing their daughters.
Oh, wow.
Underneath this canopy is a prayer shawl, and right above it is the fathers and mothers of the Jewish people. So the continuity, and this picture just really says it all.
Yes. Wow.
I want to get to one more thing. These are French Jews, by the way. There's a day where French Jews come and show their solidarity with Hebron. We're all searching for Messiah, and there's some statements that he may come on a white donkey, and there's a whole discussion about that. So I took this picture as an Israeli soldier was riding this white donkey. This is a Fox News broadcaster. His name is Pete Hegseth, and he's a former soldier and loves to hang out with soldiers. This is our famous Chabad rabbi, Rabbi Danny Cohen, and he's putting on the prayer tefillin. These are leather boxes that contain scrolls, as the Bible says to do. So he's helping the soldier pray. This is our former justice minister.
Yes.
Ayelet Shaked. This is the mayor of Jerusalem. These pictures aren't for everybody. This is somebody that Americans may know. It's Michael Oren, who was Israeli ambassador to the U.S. This is me and Prime Minister Netanyahu. He just really desperately wanted to take a selfie with me, so I let him. But he was at an event recently in Hebron. Here he is with his wife Sarah at the seventh step. That's that place where Jews were allowed to pray for 700 years. This is Ben Shapiro. He came in last year. But there is a picture that I wanted to show you. This is some of our synagogue. We have a lot of archaeology. This is Second Temple ritual baths, because Jews, when they used to make olive oil, wine, and other things, they had to do it in ritual purity so that it could be used at the temple. There's a lot of stuff in Hebron, but I do want to get to one picture. Well, this one's very important. We just in terms of archaeology, we found 5 seals in Hebron that said they were 2,700 years old from the time of Hezekiah. And they said very simply, to the king Hebron. Lamelech Hebron. 2 words. If you want to look it up, look up the LMKH seals. LMKH seals. 5 of them were found in Hebron. It just means that these were storehouses or tax collection points for the king. And in this case, it was probably King Hezekiah. I'm almost finished here. I just want to get to one picture, which is important. This is my good friend Alex having a bar mitzvah for his son at a 500-year-old synagogue. From the expulsion of Spain in 1492, by 1540, there were 1,000 new Jews in Hebron. And so they built a synagogue in 1540. And my friend Alex is doing his bar mitzvah there. These are the pictures that I wanted to get to. I wanted to also say that, yes, we have conflict with jihadis, but it's not only conflict. We also have excellent relations with some of the Arab tribes. In this case, it's the Jabri tribe, and this is a iftar meal after Ramadan. Every night on the 30 days of Ramadan, they have a meal afterwards. They invited us to this Arab leader's house in Hebron, and he catered it kosher, and we sat together and we had a great meal. There I am on the left, and if you notice, I have my hands on somebody. This is a young man by the name of Khaldun Husseini. Khaldun Husseini. He's a young businessman, and he's looking to really do business with Israel. But that last name Husseini should definitely surprise some people who know history, because Husseini is a family that was very antithetical to Israel for generations, including a very bad guy named Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who in 1929 stirred up a riot that ended up murdering 67 Jews in Hebron, and that caused the destruction of the community under British rule. His name was Hajj Amin al-Husseini. I asked Khaldun Husseini, I said, Khaldun, who is Hajj Amin al-Husseini to you? He said, that's my great-grandfather.
Wow.
I said, and now you're breaking bread with the Jews? He said, absolutely. I said, why? He said, we've had enough. We realize it's not the way to go. We realize that it's time to do business and make a life and forget this pointless war, because the Jewish people aren't going anywhere. And so Khaldun Husseini, you see I have my hand on him, and we're together. And that just goes to show you that indeed it's not just conflict. There's also, back to Ishmael and Isaac burying Abraham together, there's something that can bring people together. I guess this is my last picture. If you are in Ashkelon, you see my hair is wet because I just came from the beach in Ashkelon, also a very, very ancient city. I mentioned already 4,000 years ago in Egyptian letters. And it is the place where Samson was, many times Ashkelon. If you read the story in chapter 16 of the book of Judges. And if you go from Ashkelon to Hebron, it's actually a straight shot on a road called Route 35, the Cross-Judean Highway. And there's a lot of these signs that say, now it says something that most folks outside of the land of Israel don't understand. This says, you might think it says Machpelah, but it's really Machpelah. The Machpelah cave, that's the biblical Hebrew name for the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs. And I want to work really hard to change these signs so it would say tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs. But in any case, there we are, and we are on this road heading right for Hebron. So I really want to encourage everybody to, next time they come to the land of Israel, to not miss the opportunity to come to Hebron, to really connect with the foundations of all of our faiths, an incredible history, and an incredible effort to secure Jewish rights in this place today, including through soldiers and the force of the state of Israel, which ensures the Jewish people's rights in the land of Israel. But after all that, just realize that God is doing great things and that you're a part of it. And I just want to welcome everybody to come visit Abraham and Sarah. And in the meantime, if you can't visit, stand strong with Israel, be blessed by Israel, and be part of the program that God is revealing in this world.
Amen. I just want to thank you, Yishai, because you know what? It's when I talk to you, when I'm over there, when I see the passion of the Jewish people, and I see their love. There is a love. There is a genuine care for all people and all nations. I mean, of course, there is a passion, a zeal for God's inheritance that he gave you. I mean, that goes without saying. All the foundations, all the promises, when the nations say they want to remove you from Judea and Samaria, which they call the West Bank, they basically want you to surrender to the nations your inheritance.
Correct.
And that is not going to happen. That is not going to, definitely not on your watch, and definitely not on any watch. It's been 2,000 years that you have carried the torch of faithfulness for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I just want to thank you. Actually, if you go back to Abraham, you said it's 3,800 years.
Right. Steve, and you said something so well. I just want to finish off that statement. We've been carrying that torch for 3,800 years. would we now, at the very moment of our redemption, give it up, mess it up? It would be absurd. This is to be alive in this generation, to have a small hand in this time, and to spur it, whatever the right word is, to forget it, to renege on it. Absolutely not. This is the moment to strengthen our faith and to strengthen our will, gird our loins in biblical terminology, and get ready to fight for God and to usher him in his presence back to Zion.
Well, you know what? You've been faithful. I think it's really been our problem, because you've been trying to tell us about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob for 3,800 years. And I go for, because the 9th of Av, what we're doing for the nation's 9th of Av is gathering the nations. In Zechariah 8, it says that God will once again have a zeal for Zion, a passion for Zion, and he will return to Zion, and he'll call his people back. But this is also where it says the nations will take hold. 10 from the nations will take hold of the Jewish people and say, we heard that God is with you. Let's make Aliyah together. Let's go up. And right now, we are calling the nations to make Aliyah with you, to take hold. And for me, it's not, you're not going to drag me up there. I want to lift the Jewish people up to their place. I want to walk it together. I want to know the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I want to know his faithfulness. I want to see his glory return to Zion. And I mean, I want to see all these promises fulfilled. And maybe you've had to go through this until we got it together and decided we wanted to make Aliyah with you. Maybe that's the whole thing. But right now I'm telling you, we're calling the nations, we're coming, and we're going to be a blessing. And I just want to thank you, your fathers, for their faithfulness, because we are truly blessed.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for letting me be with you. And may God give us strength to continue to do his holy work.
Amen. Amen. Shalom, Yishai. We will talk to you soon. This year in the land, I pray.
Amen.
Bye-bye.
May the world be healed from this disease, and the skies shall open up again, and we'll reconnect again in the Holy Land.
Thank you for joining us today. To learn more about the nation's 9th of Av and how you can be part of the conversation, visit us at 9-av.com.